Hey there guys, welcome back, Ricky here. Alright, so today we are going to talk about stropping, and more specifically we're going to talk about the j-strop, or how to j-strop. And if you guys watch my videos enough, you guys will know that I make a little j motion when I'm stropping, depending on what knife I'm using, and also depending on what stone and strop that I'm using as well. So today we're going to talk about the how to strop on leather, and then we'll talk about how to strop on a whetstone, and what the differences are, and how you actually will use it to maximize your sharpness of your knife. So I'll just start with the leather, and we'll go with the stone afterwards. So with the leather, I have two different knives here. We have an 8-inch chef knife by Strong, and we also have their Kritske. And so these two knives, although they are both essentially chef knives in their own respect, their profiles are very different, and that's going to dictate how you strop on leather, and actually on a whetstone as well. So we will start with the Kritske. Alright, so this is just a leather strop that I made. And stropping is actually really simple. Okay, so essentially the concept of stropping is you really do the same motion, or pretty much, or you try to mimic the same motion as you're sharpening, except you only apply pressure on the edge trailing stroke, especially on leather. You don't want to go edge leading strokes. Okay, you will cut into the leather and you will just ruin your leather and your strop, and then you'll be very upset. So remember, when you're stropping, the idea is you only go backwards, or go towards the spine, or push towards the spine, or push away from the cutting edge. Okay? I'm a very practical guy. A lot of folks actually complain on my comments section that I strop on whetstone as opposed to just leather. Guys, let's get down to earth for one moment here. Okay, my channel is not about doing the proper thing or doing the classic methods of sharpening. So as a disclaimer, I am not a professional sharpener. I have no idea what the proper way to sharpen a knife is. All I know is I practice sharpening my knives in my own studio, and I'm showing you on my channel what has worked for me. And so if you guys are looking for for classical techniques of how to sharpen and strop the proper way, you might as well just close the window and go watch another video, because I don't know what the proper way to do something is. I have no idea what I'm doing is actually technically correct or wrong. I just know that it works for me, and so that's why I'm sharing these informations with you. So I have no interest in doing things the right way or the proper way. I hope you guys appreciate that. And so when people write me and say you're not, you're doing sharpening an injustice by not stropping on leather and stropping on a whetstone, well, I don't really care, because I can strop on a whetstone and get the same result as I can strop on leather. So if I don't have to buy another piece of equipment, then I won't buy another piece of equipment. Now, people get overly excited as to what methods I'm using. I'm always changing my methods. I'm always learning new things. So if I try something and it works, I use it. As a word of caution, when you watch my video or any other YouTuber's video, please don't take their word as the law of the land. There's not one way to do anything. If you find something that works for you, that's great. Okay, so don't, I'm not gonna say, you'll never see on my videos that you have to do anything one way, and that's not how I do things. There are maybe others who actually will preach a certain sermon every single video, and that's fine, but that's not how I do things. I'm always learning. My channel is always evolving based on what I'm learning and what I'm experimenting with. So here we have our leather strop, and what we are looking at here is a piece of leather on a piece of wood, or on a slab of wood. And this is the Kritske. Okay, so let's just take a look here how I normally strop. So when I come to the strop after I'm off my sharpening stone, you'll see me bring the knife to the leather, and you will see me strop, and I'll start stropping. Okay, and what you will notice if you guys watch it very closely, there is I do a very slight J motion at the very beginning of the strop. Then I come up, and it becomes a very linear pull, because this is a very straight knife. There is a very minor radius here, but not a whole lot. But for the most part, this is a very straight knife by most standards. And you will see that I do a light push outwards, then I come back up. That's why this is called a j-strop. Alright, so here's why I do it. First of all, this is a piece of leather, and this is a knife with a sharp, very pointed tip. If I did not pull the tip away, I have an increased chance of digging the tip into the leather. And so this is how it looks like if you were to not go the J route. So you would normally just get your tip onto the leather and you would push upwards. Now for the most part, if you took your time and did this very slowly, this would not be a problem. But if you're learning how to strop, and if you simply had a really sharp tip and you accidentally just maybe had an angle that was slightly too high, there is a very high chance that your tip would actually go into the leather. And that's as simple as that. So by pulling your tip and by pulling it to the right, you start your motion, you actually will eliminate the possibility of your tip going in to the leather. And that's really it. It's really that simple. So when you're coming down, you simply pull to the side, and then you come up towards the center of the strop so that you can get the rest of your knife. And that is how you do it on this side, on the right side of your knife. Very, very simple, very easy to explain. So that's really it. I mean, there's no magic behind there. That really is the easiest way I can explain it. And also coming to the other side, now a lot of folks will have, this actually coming on the left side is actually very difficult for a lot of people because unless you're actually very well versed with sharpening, this is actually a very difficult muscle to develop because you no longer have your grip and your wrist as leverage. You're coming this way. Okay, I need to zoom out just a little bit and show you guys this other motion here. So when you are sharpening the left side of the knife, this motion right here is actually very difficult for a lot of people. Now, because you no longer have your leverage and your arm in this linear fashion, you're over here, your arm is extended, your elbow's almost extended as well, and your wrist is way out apart from your body. So this motion right here, unless you've had a lot of practice, is actually quite difficult for a lot of people. So how do you actually get around that? Well, you can do a couple of different things. First off is you actually can just go this way, and you can just pull from the heel to the tip. That actually works really well. Now people are questioning, well, do you get the same result? Yes, you actually do. I mean, the point is, as long as you are keeping the same angle as your sharpening angle, the result is the same. You are still pulling the knife on the leather, and there's really no difference there. And so so it is actually perfectly fine to go from this angle, from the tip to heel, and then from up here, from heel to tip. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no, there is nowhere that says that you have to strop in one fashion on left and right side. You do what's easiest for you. Now I've been sharpening for a while now, and I do a lot of practice with my sharpening. So for me, this motion is actually not all that difficult, though it may look a little bit of an awkward angle, but for me it's actually very, very normal. Okay, so next thing about stropping on leather, there's a couple of things you can think about when you guys are sharpening next time. So if you are having issues, let's say that you are having a tough time maintaining a certain angle. Let's say you have you're starting on your tip area, and then all of a sudden you find that you either lean the knife too far down or you stand it up too far up. It is completely okay to actually strop one section at a time. This is very, very okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you were to do that, I recommend that you just apply extremely, extremely light pressure, because you can very easily roll your edge when you bring your knife back onto the strop. And the key thing is actually keeping your wrist at a very consistent angle. Once you find that angle and you decide that that's where you want to strop, you simply push. Okay, come back this way. Again, the results will be the same. Please don't feel bad that you're not getting the entire length of the blade in one stroke. There's nothing wrong with this. Your result will be very consistent if your angles is very consistent and you take your time. And over time, you will have the muscles. You will develop the muscles to go from one tip to the other side. And that's very, very easy to develop. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of practice. Okay, so that's stropping with a Kritsuke or very straight edge knife. So now we have the Strong 8-inch with a curved blade. You can see this is a very different profile. Okay, so very, very different profile knife. This here, you will strop a little bit more differently. This is what it looks like when I'm stropping. Okay, so you can see that the motion, if you look really closely, the J motion, the original J motion, is actually even larger than on the other knife. So why is that? Well, the key thing is, look at the belly. This belly here is actually relatively, it's not a huge belly. There are knives with very big, rounded, pronounced bellies. And so the key with this is you are allowing the strop to actually get the rounded part of the belly as you are moving up the blade. Okay, so a knife that has a very pronounced belly and a relatively straighter latter half of the cutting edge, what happens is if you do a linear push, what's going to happen, and this is going to happen over time, this won't happen very quickly. This may take years for you actually to see the results, but the belly that was originally very pronounced, if you do linear pushes, you eventually will wear that belly down, and so you'll have a funky flat spot on your belly. Now again, that's very difficult to detect. That won't happen very quickly, and so a lot of folks will just strop their knives very normally as usual, and over time, as they're sharpening, they'll feel a little funny in the belly area. I've had many subscribers actually ask me that, why their knives actually kind of feeling funny in the belly, and I ask them how do they strop, how do they sharpen, and they explain that they strop by going straight linear pushes when their bellies are actually very pronounced. So that's what happens. And so the same thing now with this knife here, because of the belly that's actually built into it, you have a lower chance of digging into the knife, because naturally, if you allow the knife to actually roll with the strop, you'll feel that the knife actually kind of guides itself. And that's the key to stropping, is you don't want to apply pressure or any unnecessary pressure. You really want the knife to just take its own course. And that's the key to having a good strop, is you are letting the knife do its own thing. You're simply guiding. And for those who are asking, or for those who are wondering, how much pressure am I applying onto my strop? I'm applying zero pressure at this point. I'm simply letting the knife roll on the strop, and that is it. I'm not applying any pressure right now. Okay, so that's why the j-strop is very necessary in some cases. Now again, you can completely go and sharpen the same knife without the j-strop by going backwards or going from heel to tip. Okay, so by going this way, you avoid the j-strop. And for those who have limited mobility in your wrist, this is a really good method for that. Okay, you can also go one layer or one section at a time. Nothing wrong with it. Alright, so that's the stropping method with a curved profile. So before we move on to the whetstone, I want to give you guys one more piece of advice, and it's this. And this applies more to the left side of the blade. When you are stropping, let's say you're stropping backwards, okay? So you're stropping backwards on both sides. Now this is really not problematic on the right side of the blade because you're pushing away from you, and it's actually really difficult to do this motion because so let me just start with the left side. Okay, so let's just do this. On the left side, when you are stropping, the tendency is you want to get the belly of the blade and the tip, and so you do this little snap at the end. Okay, avoid the snap, avoid the flicker of your wrist. Okay, when you do that, you are increasing the chances of the stone or your strop getting cut when you flick your wrist forward, because you really want to go backwards. You want to go away from the cutting edge. Okay, when you're stropping, but when you try to angle and flick your wrist to get the tip and the belly, you are now going edge linear to the actual strop, and so you will cut. See right here, I'm just going, if I go normally, this is me going normally, very linear, with a very slight bend. But as soon as I try to make that flick at the end and try to actually see how the leather strop is actually getting cut, you want to avoid that. On the left-hand side, or on the right side, when you're going the other way, is actually more difficult because you really can't bring your wrist and flick your wrist at all. Very, very difficult. So this really more applies to the right. I keep saying right hand. This applies more to the left side of the strop. When you strap on the left side of the blade, see how as soon as I turn my wrist, I'm cutting into the leather strop. So my advice is just going really slow, okay, and making sure that you keep your angle at a relative angle to when you started. Okay, and if you're having trouble there, just go in sections. Okay, and remember to avoid turning the knife or turning your wrist. That's it. That will save your strop. It'll save your edge. Okay, so that's one other tip I can have for you. So now we're going to move on to the whetstone. So here's my whetstone. I'm going to put a piece of anti-slip sheet here. Okay, so let's give you guys a better view. All right, we're back. Okay, so we're going to apply some water here. This is my trusty 3000 Chaucera, one of my favorite polishing stones, and it also makes a great sharpening stone. So we will go with the Kuritsuke, so now a straighter profile knife. Alright, so when I'm sharpening this knife, you guys will see that if I'm sharpening this knife on this stone, and before I finish or before I move to a higher grit stone, if I do, you will see I always strop my knives. Okay, and I always strop my knives before I move on to the next level stone. And so now you're wondering, why is he going edge trailing strokes versus an edge leading stroke? And you'll see that I will switch depending on what knife I'm using. So for this right here, for this stone and for this, let me get a little bit more water here. Alright, so now, because this edge here is very linear, I will push in a linear fashion. I will hold my angle, I would find the angle that I'm sharpening at, and hopefully by the time you get to this moment, hopefully you've had enough muscle memory in your wrist that you know exactly what angle you sharpen the knife at. Okay? So you find that angle, and then you strop. Okay? And on this whetstone, and because this edge is actually fairly straight, the J motion, okay, it's less exaggerated. You want to go just a little bit, because you're not risking cutting into the stone. That's not really going to happen. However, there is a slight tiny bit of a curve there, so you still want to get that curve. Unless you actually want to change the profile of your knife and make it straight, that's fine too. But you'll see there is a very slight curve. Okay? So that's really how you strop on this knife. And very, very simple. And again, I'm applying no pressure. I'm simply allowing the knife to run its course on the stone. Okay? And you'll see that my knife stays at the same angle when I start and when I finish. Same thing here. Same angle. You see, usually when I strop with just one finger. And I may use two, just as kind of just more stability on my part. But I'm always making the effort to use just one finger when I strop. Alright? So now, I have my 8-inch Shogun X here. If you guys watch some of the tutorials that I've used with this knife, or that I've done with this knife, you'll see that I strop edge leading. Now why is that? I'm like, wait a minute, you just stropped edge trailing with the other knife, and then now you're going edge leading, and on leather you did edge trailing as well. So why the switch up? Well, on a whetstone, you're not going to really risk cutting into the whetstone. So that's number one. So when you have a knife that's actually very curved or has a constant radius, which is what this one has, it's actually a little more difficult on a whetstone to go backwards. And this is something that you guys will find out on your own time. But what happens is, because it is a constant radius and the whetstone is very, very straight and very, very hard, there is a tendency for you to go slightly linear pushes. And also, when you do these linear pushes, what happens is the belly of the knife will eventually straighten. Again, this goes back to when you use a method that is meant for a straight knife. On a curved knife, you will eventually straighten that knife. So to avoid this belly or any part of this knife becoming straight over time, I go with a very, the easiest way I have found is going with a curved or crescent stroke method. Okay, so I'm following the curve of the knife and allowing the knife, or the shape of the knife, to guide the sharpening or guide the stropping process. Now, if I try to go backwards, I still can, but what happens is it's a little bit more difficult. And again, because of the nature of the whetstone and how slippery they are, it's really difficult for you to actually get a perfectly strop going backwards or edge trailing stroke and following the curvature of the knife. So even for a experienced user as myself, this motion right here, going backwards and following this curvature, is actually quite difficult. Okay, I can do it, but I'm not confident all of the time that I will get all of the edge of the knife. So that's why when I'm using a knife that has either a pronounced belly or a constant radius from tip to heel, I go edge leading. Okay, so in this case, you're still asking, can you do a j-strop with this knife? Well, certainly you can. I'm going to apply a little bit of water here. And so the j-strop still applies if you go edge trailing. Okay, you go from here and you go that way, and then you follow the curvature of the knife. So it still applies if you are looking to do a j-strop with this sort of a profile. So all the rules really still apply, except you have to account for the curvature of the knife, and so you have to compensate with a slight movement, a slightly different adjustment of your wrist, and that's really it. Now you can also go sections, there's nothing wrong with that, or you can go backwards. Going backwards is completely okay here in this case. Now with this, the differences going on a whetstone versus leather is when you're getting this part of your blade, you can do a slight turn and it won't cut into the whetstone. Okay, but my suggestion is just holding that angle, okay, and just allowing the knife to run its course. So however you want to do it, there's no one way. If you guys watch enough of my videos, you guys will see that on some videos I go from tip to heel on the right side, and then from heel to tip on the left side. So I've done that in many videos. People comment like, why are you stropping that way? That's completely wrong. You're teaching people bad habits. Yeah, I am. I'm sorry. All I care about is how I get my knives sharp. And if my knives can get sharp with the path of least resistance, I will go that route. Alright guys, well that is it for this video. Hopefully that actually explains how to j-strop and why I j-strop, the differences between stropping on leather and on a whetstone. I mean, there are many ways to actually go about this. There's no one way. If you guys have any questions regarding how to get the best edge for your knife, just leave in the comments. I will read through it, and if I can put a video together for you, I will. Alright guys, well that'll be it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. If you guys are curious as to what my life looks like on a daily basis, head over to my vlog at Ricky Tran, which I will leave in the card here or in the description below. My vlog is much more an in-depth look at my life and to kind of show you guys exactly what happens. Nothing's being edited out. You guys are seeing exactly me as I am. It's the same person, just kind of in a different context. You guys will get to see everything, how my channel gets put together, what my schedule is like every single day, what my routine is like every single day. And for those who are curious about how to run a YouTube channel, I show you guys that as well. That's something that a lot of folks have asked me about. I basically show you how I run my channel and show you what goes on in terms of how I get my knives, how I started getting my knives, and what the process is of me producing my videos. I'll show you my setup and show you basically everything that I use. So if you guys are curious about that, would love to have you guys join me there. Again, I will leave the card here in the corner of the screen or in the description below. And for any other requests for stropping tips, if you guys want to see, if the helicopter is back. Why is it back? Go away. Go away. Go away. Okay, it's gone.